All righty. Well, welcome to the Nurture Nature Show, brought to you from One Earth Conservation. I am the Reverend Dr. Laura Kim Joyner.
I'm Meredith Garman.
Yeah, this show helps us nurture nature, all of nature, by seeing how we're like animals, other animals. We have multi-species moments. We have times to pause. We have conservation news, everything that's happening on this earth and with One Earth. So let's do our main topic today, shall we?
Our top story today.
Yes, we're going to be thinking about, what is our role with animals? Should we just leave them alone? How can we nurture them? Should we just leave them alone, or should we be doing something with them? What's your take on this?
What does leaving alone look like when we have as much power as we have? If we choose to not intervene in some way, that's our decision too. We are now at a place that we weren't at for most of human history. For most of human history, we didn't have a choice about whether we could prevent a predation event from happening or not. But now we actually could. And so we're exercising our decision-making on animals, even when we choose not to do something. Whether we choose to act or not act, it's us deciding now.
So you're just saying it's sort of like we have our thumb on everything.
Well, we do. There is so much influence of the human activity over everywhere on the planet. Climate change, of course, is changing the lives of all kinds of species. And if we prevented it, then that would change their lives too. We can set aside preserves. We can set aside a certain area and say, we're not going to interfere with how wildlife interacts with each other in this area. But we know that ecosystems are affected by their border region, where they edge against some other space, and that influences the next layer in, which influences the next layer. All the way to the center is affected by the edge community, where sooner or later it's going to meet humanity. We don't have very large preserves for just wildlife.
Well, so you're basically saying there's no way we can't have an impact. We can't leave the animals alone. But the question is, well, what should we do? I work in conservation, so it's clear that when we cause harm, when humans cause harm, that we have to repair that relationship and come around in right relationships.
Yes, the issue of just leave them alone is most likely to come up when we think about predation. What is our responsibility in relationship to predation? We know we have a moral obligation not to cause harm to another person. And if we could have prevented the harm to another person and we don't, then that's culpable also. So why not apply the same rules to animals? If we could prevent that squirrel from being predated by a predator, and we don't do so, are we culpable for that? And the answer that most folks give is, well, predation is such a normal thing. We should leave them alone, let predators and prey carry out the way they do. But leave alone is just not an option. It's our choice whether we're intervening or not intervening. Either way, we have to decide what our responsibility is.
I've heard some people just say, we have all these philosophical arguments. There's the abolitionist argument saying that all animals should be wild. And then there's something they call the creationist argument, where everything should be domestic, where, like you said, we're impacting everybody. So we should just interfere with everybody and help them, and don't let deer and squirrels get hunted. And those are two of the arguments. But some people say, no, it's the care ethic. It's the relationship ethic that we reduce individual suffering where we can, and we keep species and animal communities whole. But what do I do as a parrot conservationist when I see a hawk about ready to take an endangered chick that's just been released, and there's only 200 of them left in the world? Do we shoot the hawk or don't we shoot the hawk?
Well, probably in that case, you're going to do something to make that hawk go away.
It's right. We're going to do anything else other than having to shoot them. Right.
You're invested in that. And it's a small enough scale so that you're not disrupting whole ecosystems of operation.
Right. So, but what don't we have to choose sometimes to harm others or even wildlife for us to live then?
Well, we can't escape our responsibility to be responsible managers.
Mhm.
And as we do that, we have to keep learning lots more things than we know now. We have to balance the value of predation. The prey species is made smarter and faster and sharpens their senses that they are preyed upon. It's part of the way evolution has produced such beauty in animal variety so far. That's a value, and we want to weigh that and not end all predation because of the good effects that it has, but also to minimize cruelty when it seems to be the right balance of minimizing suffering that goes on among the animals.
I remember that in the book Sapiens, what's the name of the author in the book Sapiens?
Yuval Harari.
Hamari, that
Yeah.
said that biology enables and culture denies, saying that we are animals. We evolved to do many of the very atrocious things: prey, infanticide, cannibalism, murder. I mean, we evolved to do all that, and we as moral creatures say we should not do that. And so I like to say biology enables, but culture affirms all of life, that we do everything we can to keep animal communities and animals well. But I still feel that we have an issue in that nature is not very moral. It resists moral organization on our part. And so when we try to have a straight out world, don't do violence here and don't do violence here, nature goes and shows us up and seems to do almost the worst thing possible.
Nature resists,
including us.
Nature resists our moral organization.
Right.
Our moral organization resists nature. Or think of it not so much as a resistance, but as a kind of dance. There's a back and forth dance that goes on as we think about, well, here's the fact of the matter, that how nature unfolds,
Mhm.
and here's what we hope for and what we would like for the flourishing of that. Our moral reasoning enters in as we decide our responsibility. What is ours to do about that?
What does the Zen tradition tell us about this? You have a reading, don't you, about what we do with the predator?
Oh, well,
prey
I just really appreciated Robert Aitken's little book called Zen Master Raven, in which he
Mhm.
takes little animal characters, anthropomorphizes them, and tells a story about them, supposing that they were a Zen community.
Mhm.
And one day, and this is toward the end of the book, one day in their little Zen community, Copperhead shows up. Copperhead came by one evening unannounced. Mole made himself scarce, and owl, woodpecker, and grouse set up a clatter. Copperhead said, "Excuse me, everybody. I came for the great law, not for my dinner." The birds quieted down, but Mole did not return. Raven asked, "Do you have a question?" "Yes," said Copperhead. "I'm really interested in the way, but I don't seem to have the right livelihood for it." Raven said, "The way does not depend on your livelihood." Copperhead asked, "What is the way?" Raven said, "We'd be totally lost without you."
So we'd be lost without the predator. We'd be lost without the tragedy in nature.
There is a tragic element out of which the beauty comes. And we've got to recognize that interdependence goes all the way down.
So how do anyone watching this and somebody put in a question about, how do we help others see about moral obligations? How do we decide? How do we decide to accept the tragedy which biology enables? And then how do we use our culture, our moral obligations to reduce that suffering and harm when it's inherent in nature?
Right. Well, we want to carve out spaces where we can leave them alone
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. And we recognize that it's us that's deciding to carve out those spaces, to designate those set aside spaces within which the ecosystem can balance itself the way it needs to. But we have to be watching that. We have to be learning more than we know now about how to help facilitate flourishing. There's a lot of the way that flourishing happens that we can't make happen, but we can facilitate it by learning about it, carefully watching it, and contributing in small amounts while trying to preserve as much of it as we can.
And reducing our harm as consumers.
And of course, our consumption is a huge part of
our
what
diets
uses up resources, making it a lot harder for
right.
other humans as well as for all the other non-human beings.
So how does this conversation helping people nurture nature? By helping them see that
we have this specific ability. It's, we can't echolocate, we can't smell like a hound dog, but we do have this specific ability to think about what the future might be like from as language paints it for us. So we can morally reason that way, and we can notice our connection. There are things that we can do to enter into this process, learning more about the way ecosystems work. Every time you manage to make yourself pick up a book and learn some more about the way an ecosystem works, there's a spiritual component to that. There's a connectingness of you to what you're learning about, the world that we're in, the multi-species totality. And that brings Laura Kim back to us.
That's right. Let's just having a little battery problem here on our amateur nurture nature show. If we all like it, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep going better with it. And so what I'm hearing you say, let's just be in right relationship. Let's pay attention. And it's sort of what I said earlier. Biology enables. There's so much tragedy and beauty, but culture affirms life. So let's get our culture together and let's affirm life and take care of it, shall we?
Culture can affirm.
Right.
It doesn't inevitably.
Yeah. So let's go on to our multi-species minutes. What's been going on for the week in the multi-species news? We had a question last week about House Bill 543. It's known as the Power Act, where it wants to deny the right of the President of the United States to do moratoria on mining rights and any type of use of federal lands. And the proponents of it say we need energy jobs. And the opponents of it say that, well, we can get energy jobs from green energy, from like climate infrastructure, like the bill that is the House is going to put on, the administration is going to put out for $3 trillion. And none of it trumps that we need a clean world and a safe world for all of us. And so we need to quit drilling. And so the question was how do we feel about it? Well, I'm all for biodiversity and clean jobs. I don't think I have to think very hard about that.
Not too much. There's an empirical question about just what are the prospects for green jobs. I'd like to believe that the prospects for lots of green jobs are really good. And so that's just a question for economics, to how much employment are we going to get out of the green sector. But there's also a culture war going on here. You've got people who just don't like new jobs. They want to keep old jobs. And those people are causing economic disruptions by causing people to have to leave some kinds of jobs and go to others.
Change is hard.
Change is hard.
Change is hard.
And it is going to be disruptive to learn a way to live more harmoniously with all the creatures around us.
Yeah, to change our culture so that it affirms life. Other news is that the oldest ring-billed gull that humans have ever documented was found in Ohio this week. It had been 27 years and now it's 28 years of age.
It's a ring-billed
gull. Ring-billed gull.
It's got
how
many rings does it have around?
One ring, right?
It's 27 years old?
No, it's 28. The record had been 27.
How do they know how old it is?
The bird has a band. And so an amateur photographer got up really close and took a picture, blew it up and read the number on the band.
They don't count the rings?
No, they don't do that.
Because it always has only one.
Oh, he only has one ring. So great.
Gotcha.
So speaking of great animal news and old animals, if you ever get on, there's a long list of animals that have gone extinct.
I remember I've been at services where we read off the list of the animals that went extinct in the last 10 years.
Or just in the last year. And 1 million species are in danger, and that's 1/4 of all species that we know about. And we're including plants and trees in this too. But there are some species that they have found that have come back. I mean, they knew they were found, but we didn't know where they were. So shall I read off some of those that have come out this week?
Some people say we're in a 6th great extinction. That something like 75 to 90% of all species have disappeared in last great extinctions, and we might be in the middle of a 6th great extinction.
We are.
But these species aren't extinct.
Not yet. They're still there.
We thought they were.
So we're only gonna do 5. There's many. In the last decade, we have rediscovered the elephant shrew of Somalia.
The elephant shrew of Somalia.
The Terra skink of New Caledonia.
I think I found one of those in my closet yesterday.
They're in Asia. They have huge pointy teeth though. So
Yeah, well, I don't know.
the Cuban Soledon, it's a really old species. It's a venomous mammal they've refound. Venomous mammals. The Bermuda petrel, which is a kind of seabird. It's not an oil company.
Good name for an oil company, though.
Yeah, oh, it is. It is. And the Australian, let's get back into our own period here. The Australian night parrot. They thought it was gone, and now they think there's about 30 to 100 of them.
Were they looking during the day?
No, you need to look at night. And of
Right.
course,
That's why they weren't finding them.
Not exactly. They are nocturnal, but they don't really see very well in the dark.
Neither do I.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's another study that came out this week. They just announced that zookeepers are using dogs to find out when Tasmanian devils are ready to breed.
Because if you're a zookeeper, you need to know.
You need to know.
And you can train your dog to tell you.
I think the Tasmanian devils, they already know. I mean, a little privacy for them, huh?
So do the dogs just talk Tasmanian and they ask them?
Nose.
They can smell.
They can smell when a female Tasmanian devil is ready to breed. That's right.
Wow.
So we're using one animal to help us with an endangered.
But the male Tasmanian devils just smell the same all the time.
Yeah, always the same, just straight on. Yeah.
Mm.
So during the pandemic, the worst months of the shutdown, which for many of us was around March, April, May, we thought that we were hearing more birds. But you know what a study in San Francisco found? The birds were actually softer, 37% softer of songbirds in the San Francisco Bay Area.
So when you say softer, we're talking about just volume.
Decibels.
And they had lower volume. They
That's
were
right.
not singing as loud.
That's right. That's right. That's what they found out. Maybe didn't have to compete with all the human noise. And they're saying, oh, I don't want to sing so loud. That predator is going to get me. Or I don't have to sing so loud because she's going to hear me. And it's good enough.
Do we have any other studies that compare volume of bird song to its background noise?
I don't know.
That would be.
People write that in.
A way to check.
Let us know about that. And we do need to be thinking about our noise as we come back from the pandemic. Is that another study with 147 birds that was also a study done in California found out that sound does impact bird health and how many chicks they get, and it impacts their well-being as well, and it does pollution. So we need to be careful about these things.
Just like noise disrupts our psychic equilibrium.
So a few more pieces is it is springtime. Speaking about birds, oh boy, they're so loud in our northeastern area, and it reminds me of what a professor once told me, is that robins' testes, the male birds, they have internal testes, increases in size by 500 times during the spring, and that's what's
because
just
they get so shriveled up in the winter.
They do. They just
in the spring,
bam, and they just can't help but talk. That's exactly
you
right.
Sing too.
Yeah, that's right. 500 times. And I looked up some other birds, and doves and starlings are up around the 200, 300 range. So it's across many species.
200 what?
Increased size in testes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
200 times increase.
Right. So let's move on to our conservation news. Speaking of reproduction, we want to let you know that the yellow-headed parrot, an endangered parrot in Guatemala, well, it's throughout Mexico all the way down through Honduras, that it was an area that was really hit with hurricanes. So thanks to some donors, we were able to get in and really do a nest monitoring project there and help employ the people who had to leave their homes because of the floods. And right now they're up to 18 nests of a bird where we think there's only 100 left between Guatemala and Honduras.
Yellow-headed parrots.
That's right, 100 birds, and we have found 18 nests, and the people are ready to protect them. And just this morning, I got news that they have a second nest now in the same tree. So it's really unusual to get two in one tree. So congratulations, and that's our conservation news for the week. And before we end, we take a moment and we breathe deep and we have our pause for the week. And I think, Meredith, you were going to read to us something from Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has some closing words for us. Accepting our kinship with all life on Earth is not only solid science. In my view, it's also a soaring spiritual experience.
And that's why we do this Nurture Nature show, to see how we are animals and how closely related. And I was just seeing a question by Gretchen Grimm going, where do those robins go with their small testes during the winter? Where do they go? They are actually year round in New York. I see them all through the winter, but they definitely are louder and have more numbers of them come the springtime.
But there's more now. Where do they come from? Where were they wintering?
They move around, but they generally go south.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely a migratory species. So thank you all for attending, and send us your comments and questions as we go. We'll be here next Thursday at 4 p.m. This is April Fools. It's going to be our April Fool's service. And what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about deception.
So we could tell you what the topic was, but I wouldn't believe it.
That's right. We could do it. So check out, get in touch with us on Facebook or on our website, oneearthconservation.org, and we'd be happy to talk to you. And so folks, until next time, remember that you are an animal.
You can't help it.
So act like one.
Or don't.
Let's try that again. Remember, you are an animal.
So act like one.
You can't help it.
So help it.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.